With Britain and France up against it in June 1940, the Italians could see the war going Germany's way and declared war on the Allies on the 10th of June 1940. There were several skirmishes between Italian and British forces on the Libyan and Egyptian borders. At the height of the Battle of Britain in September 1940, the Italians decided to chance it and invade Egypt from their territories in Libya. The Italian army was quite big, some 150,000 against a British desert force based around the Suez Canal of no more than 36,000. The Italians had vastly superiority in tanks, guns and aircraft, so it should have been a complete showing for the Italians. The Italians marched like some parade and advanced some 60 miles into Egypt, were constantly hit by effective British artillery, and Italian morale absolutely plummeted. The Italians dug in and waited for reinforcements. What the Italians did not expect was a much smaller British force going onto the attack, and in Operation Compass, and against all expectation, General O'Connor, one of our most capable tank generals, took the Italians, in technical terms, to the cleaners. Operation Compass was supposed to be a 5-day raid, but Commander-in-Chief Middle East General Wavell stated, if we get the opportunity against the Italians, let's take it. In one of the most incredible advances of the war, the British Army drove the Italians back over 500 miles, including the taking of Tobruk, Benghazi, all the way to El Agheila by early 1941. The British lost some 500 killed and about 1,300 wounded, and hardly any equipment. The Italians, on the other hand, oh my God, 5,500 killed, 10,000 wounded, 133,000 prisoners of war, 400 tanks, 900 guns and some 500 aircraft. If the British had just had a few more reinforcements, the whole of North Africa was up for grabs, right up to Tripoli, and it was in our grasp to kick the Italians right out of North Africa. But in early 1941, Churchill made one of the great strategic errors of World War II by stripping this force and sending some of its best units and best equipment to Greece and holding the gains with a minimum force. The British were led almost into a false sense of security and were buoyed by their recent victories and had taken massive risks, and those risks had actually paid off. But the downside is they were also concluded that the tanks did not need infantry support, even artillery support in the desert, and this would haunt the British Army throughout the rest of North Africa and would not be resolved until much later in the war. In February 1941, a small German expeditionary force under General's most famous general, General Erwin Rommel, arrived in Tripoli. He was told to help the Italians hold the line until a larger force could be assembled. Rommel was having none of that, and in March 1941 he sent his force on the attack and knocked the reduced British force for 6, pushing them back and back, leaving Tobruk under siege. This would start over 2 years of hard fighting against the Germans and Italians in North Africa. And you could argue it was the British battle school. Generals came and went, some okay, some failing miserable. Tactics did not work, and we kept repeating the same failed tactics. In fact, Rommel used the old Wellington line, the British attack in the same old way, and we beat them in the same old way. As stated earlier, British artillery saved the 8th Army time and time again, and the DAF, the Desert Air Force, fought hard not to lose air superiority and again stopped total disaster. General Claude Auchinleck, Commander-in-Chief Middle East, took over direct control of the 8th Army after the disastrous Battle of Gazala in June 1942, when he was let down by General Ritchie's poor control of the 8th Army and the loss of Tobruk, making Rommel a field marshal and very popular with Hitler. The Ork, as he was known, defeated Rommel early in Operation Crusader, but never took advantage and basically left the Afrika Korps on the battlefield. Falling back to a railway siding called El Alamein not far from the coast, and a line of about 40 miles to the Great Sahara Depression, the Hawk prepared the last stand in July 1942 in what would be known as the First Battle of Alamein. Auchinleck finally stopped the Afrika Korps with just 60 miles from Alexander in one of the pivotal battles of 1942, where we could have easily lost the war on a strategic scale overseas. These other battles were the Battle of Ceylon in April 1942, the Battle of Midway, previously mentioned, in June 1942, first Alamein in July 1942, and finally Stalingrad in late 1942, the start of the nails going into the Nazi coffin. As soon as the situation around El Alamein was secure, Churchill sacked Auchinleck and brought in a new team led by General Harold Alexander as the new Middle East Commander-in-Chief, and a new general to lead the 8th Army, General Gott. But Gott was killed in an air crash, and Brooke persuaded Churchill the somewhat divisive General Bernard Law Montgomery should lead the 8th Army. Monty soon started to revitalise the 8th Army, and in the process playing down some of the achievements of Auchinleck. But this is war. A battle needs winning, and there's no time for sentiment. Monty stopped Rommel at the Battle of Halamalfa Ridge in August 1942, Rommel's last throw of the dice to get the Afrika Korps to the Suez. After this, massive forces started to build up, including vast amounts of new US-built Sherman tanks. So by the 23rd of October 1942, started the second Battle of El Alamein. I have not included the second Battle of Alamein in one of the earlier pivotal battles of 1942, even though it was in 1942. On the grounds, there's no way we were going to lose the second Battle of Alamein. We had such massive, overwhelming force that we could have beaten them with knife, fork and spoon if we wanted to. For the first time, the Germans saw the massive result of Allied production in full swing, and it would be a one-way battle. It's either going to be a tough battle or an easy battle. The Germans and the Italians fought very hard at the Second Battle of Alamein, and in the end it was a very tough battle, leading to about 13,000 Allied casualties. But we had such massive forces, eventually the Axis forces would break. Just after El Alamein, the US and Allies landed at the other end of North Africa in Operation Torch. Now the war was a massive team game, but 6 months of fighting in North Africa lay ahead, and the US Army had its battle school in Tunisia, and for a short while the British Army was the teacher and the Green US Army the student. The British had 3 years of hard knocks and bitter lessons to pass on to the United States Army. The British Army was still being beaten on the Germans at the base tactical level, right up to the end of the campaign in North Africa, and had not sussed out the Tank V infantry cooperation. Even the US Army had got this right with its M3 half-track mounted armoured infantry. One thing that did go well after the Second Battle of Alamein and onwards was the cooperation between the three services, Royal Navy, British Army and the Royal Air Force, which we set the standards for joint service operations in Europe from 1944. No longer would the services be at each other's throats. Monty himself stated in one of his quotes, "The air above needs to be secure. If it's not secure, you'll lose the battle and lose it fairly quickly." In part 4, we shall jump forward to late 1944 and the British Army, a vastly different army in equipment, tactics and leadership, but very, very war weary on the battlefields of Northwest Europe.